Are you well? Welcome to Right Media. Right Media was created to provide a forum for you to express your opinions. For example, if you're staying at home watching the news on mainstream media or a prominent news channel, you might have a lot of things to say about what you are seeing, but you don't have a platform to express your views. Right Media was created with the aim of giving you that opportunity to express your views and ideas, giving you the opportunity to talk about the pressing issues of this country. Today, we will be talking about what is development and how to further develop our country. Since we attained independence from colonial rule in 1948, we have been a developing country. We were a developing country back then, and we are still a developing country. How can we change this? Why haven't we moved forward from the position of developing, and why haven't we become a developed nation yet? To talk about this, we have three very distinguished guests here with us today. Mr. Karunasena Hettiarachchi is the former Defence Secretary, and he has also served as the Sri Lankan Ambassador to Germany. He has also held numerous distinguished positions such as Secretary to the Ministry of Water Supply and Urban Development, Chairman of the Water Supply and Drainage Board, Land Reclamation Corporation, Environmental Authority, Foreign Employment Bureau, Geological Service and Mines Bureau, and he has also been a Senior Project Specialist at JICA. By profession, he is a Chartered Engineer. We also have with us Mr. Lolita Abesinghe. He is the Managing Director of Chelina Capital Corporation Group, and he is the former Commissioner of the Securities and Exchange Commission. He has also been the Director of NITA, and he is also the Director of Ceylon Merchant Finance. He is the former Founder Director of King's Hospital, and is an independent economic analyst. Mr. Upul Kulasinghe, he is a project recovery practitioner. As a project recovery practitioner, what he does is he provides solutions when things go wrong. That is his profession. And as for positions held, he has held a number of distinguished positions at international corporations such as British Petroleum and Shell. When we talk about development, that is the aim of every government in the world. Every government tries to develop their country. And to do this, they may employ a range of macroeconomic policies. However, the problem is sometimes these macroeconomic policies can conflict with each other. If the government tries to solely focus on development by statistics, as they try to achieve the highest economic growth rate or highest rate of industrialization, the problem with this is this can sometimes create problems such as environmental pollution or damage to the environment. Some people could argue that development truly means that if the people of that country are happy. If we look at Bhutan, Bhutan is generally said to be the happiest country in the world. It doesn't have the highest GDP per capita, it doesn't have the highest rate of industrialization, but it is a country where the people are happiest. So, what is development? Mr. Kulasinghe, what do you think is development?
To me, very importantly, development is a sense of national feeling that we are not dependent on outsiders for our well-being, whatever that may be, right? And we need to think for ourselves and have sufficient confidence in ourselves to do things in the way most appropriate to Sri Lanka and not try to import solutions from elsewhere.
Mr. Lolita Abesinghe, Mr. Kulasinghe characterized development as being self-sufficient, being able to live without support from anyone else. But as a businessman, we might be engaging in a lot of business operations with other countries, with international parties. Do you agree with what Mr. Kulasinghe said? Do you think that we should focus on development alone as a country, or do you think we should collaborate with other parties, with international parties? What is your take on development?
Yes, as Mr. Kulasinghe said, he spoke about homegrown solutions, that we can also concentrate and focus on homegrown solutions. And then there is a concept called comparative advantage of nations. So we must look at the competitive advantage the Sri Lanka has and focus on that, and our development drive should be focused on the competitive advantage Sri Lanka has in the global village. Then we can of course find homegrown solutions for certain aspects of development. There is nothing wrong in that, and then we must also go with globalization. We are an island nation, therefore the integration with the global economy is equally important as finding homegrown solutions. So I don't disagree with him, but I am going little beyond. It also depends on what kind of development you need. So if you are going to be happy with how the Bhutanese are looking at, as you said earlier, then we can be happy with homegrown solutions and stop at that. But if you want to compete with the rest of the world and become developed nations compared to global standards, then globalization is also equally important. It is how you look at it, is the perspective that you are going to use.
Mr. Hettias, you're a distinguished public servant who has served in a range of ministries as a very experienced person. So since we attained independence from British rule, we have still been a developing country. In the 1940s and 50s, it is widely said that Singaporean leaders, they came to Colombo to learn how the policies we enacted, to learn how the city was planned, and they went and implemented these policies in Singapore. If we look at Singapore and Colombo today, Singapore is a very well-developed nation. So what went wrong for us? What do you think, where do you think we went wrong?
Yeah, well, I think I agree with my colleagues here on certain areas. But what I think is, if you listen to Lee Kuan Yew's latest video, which I saw very recently, what went wrong in Sri Lanka is making the Sinhala as the national language. In Singapore, 75% of the population is Chinese, but they never made Chinese as their national language. So we have created some problems because these are not directly related to development, but these are going to affect development. Because if there is no peace and harmony in the country, the development cannot go on. So therefore, I think the best thing is that we should have done at that time. But we had some problems also on the other hand. At that time, the education's, the facilities in the rural areas were very little, and only in places like Colombo, Jaffna, Batticaloa, sometimes Trincomalee, and those areas, Galle, we had good education facilities. So therefore, some of the underprivileged areas, like where I come from, Polonnaruwa, so we didn't have science teachers, we didn't have English teachers. So therefore, we were quite backward, all our students. But I think I took a different path and I could come to this level. But I think this is not true with everybody. So when you talk about development, we are talking, sometimes some people talk about the physical development. And some people talk about social development, cultural development. There are many folds in development. But if these things are not going parallel together with the others, we may not achieve. We might achieve, we must construct a huge reservoir, but there are no farmers, no cultivation. That part is coming from our, as Mr. Kulasinghe said, from our indigenous knowledge and homegrown solutions, right? And there some part of it can come into that. So therefore, what I think is that when you consider development, I have a buzzword, that's people-centered development. Development, there are so many stakeholders. Like we have in development, politicians at the top of the country, top of the whole structure. And then we have the public servants. And then we have technocrats. And then we have contractors, consultants. So all these people are stakeholders of development, kind of physical development. So therefore, I think they think about their benefits. They very where they give very little considerations to the people's aspirations. So this is one of the biggest problems that we have. To whom we are doing development? Are we doing development for those people, stakeholders, or to the people? If you construct a what you call a bridge, if the people can't use the bridge, what's the purpose of doing the bridge? That's a political promise sometimes. So this has become very debatable things, that how we should fix the priorities and things like that. So therefore, I think when you talk about, the crux of the matter is that we should think about all aspects of development: social, cultural, economic, and physical development. So if you can put these things together in your development proposals or the policies, so you are going to achieve something. So that is the biggest problem that we made at that time. Like Singapore didn't make that mistake. We made a political blunder at that time. That's my opinion. It's a political blunder. So this is how the things went wrong. So we had 101 problems after that language issue, right?
Yes, as Mr. Etiarji said, he said that one of the key mistakes we made was embracing Sinhala Buddhist nationalism, or making Sinhala the official language of the country. Like, if we look at state-owned enterprises today, a lot of state-owned enterprises like Sri Lankan Airlines, they're running on huge losses and are a huge burden to this country. Today, there is much dialogue about privatizing these companies. When privatizing these companies, it is necessary to understand that these can be bought up by foreign investors, by foreign parties. So a key criticism that comes from this is that foreign parties might try to take control of Sri Lanka, with foreign parties trying to increase their influence in the country. So, as you said, it is important to have homegrown solutions. But what if foreign parties try to take over these privatized firms? Is that an issue?
That, to me, is the number one problem. The moment you have foreign investors, I believe, and they want a situation that they are comfortable with, which may not necessarily fit in with our aspirations, our objectives, and so on. How this is going to be solved is way beyond my ken. I'm a simple engineer, and the solution is, to me, is very simple. It is black or white. You build something, you construct something, and it works or it doesn't. So, to me, I would lean more towards doing things our way and not listen too much to the dictates of foreign investors, because they'll come here, they'll make their money or whatever it is, and then they'll go away. Whereas we are left carrying the baby. Now, in my career in Bangladesh, in the Philippines, in Papua New Guinea, to name but some of the less developed places I've worked in, all the projects are run, managed, implemented by expatriate staff. They will come, yes, a very good job is done. But they say, right, thank you very much, we are going home. Right? The country does not have the benefit, apart from the hardware, of what was done, because most of the knowledge goes away with the project team. And I have often thought it's a very inequitable situation the country is put into, because they spend the money, they don't have any of the intellectual benefit, if you like. And so what's the point of the development then? It's a short-term solution. The long-term solution, I believe, is to maximize what we can do ourselves. Because the only way we learn is by making mistakes. That's the best teacher in the world. And I can tell you, right, I've had a pretty good education in that respect. Okay? So, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with what is going on at the moment. I sometimes despair. But then what is the alternative? We are used to getting loans that we may be able to pay or may not be able to repay. Do the job and then you can see it here at the moment where people come, they do a job and they go away. What's left for the country? We have world-renowned expertise. I can only speak for the oil and gas, upstream oil and gas business. And I have friends, Sri Lankans, mind you, who go around the world advising major operating companies on how to do their business. We don't use their expertise here. Why? I don't understand.
So, as Mr. Kulisinghe said, when multinationals, foreign investors try to take over Sri Lankan firms, they might take what they can take out of it and they'll just leave, leaving us with nothing. So an alternative to this could be for us to actually, instead of trying to cut our losses, we could try to turn this around and try to make these state-owned enterprises profit-making enterprises. If we look at the Arabic world, the Middle Eastern countries, they have a lot of state-owned enterprises like Emirates Airlines, Qatar Airways. They're all state-owned enterprises and they make huge profits. So Mr. Lodi, as a businessman, do you think this is feasible? Do you think we can practically implement this in Sri Lanka? Or do you think at this moment we should simply cut our losses and try to sell off these assets?
Well, yes, selling off is not the most appropriate word, I guess. There are so many options available to enhance the efficiency of state-owned enterprises through maybe a public-private partnership model, or I believe in another model that the government can follow is that they can list most of these organizations. So if it does not fit the listing criteria, maybe through change in regulation or changing listing rules, government can list some of these organizations, and rather than privatizing, they can peopleize it. So they can broad base the ownership of these companies and open it to wide audience of public, so may it be foreign or local investors. And then also the government can come up with a cap on the investment holding. For example, in the banking sector, we have a single holding limit of 10%, and with special approval it can go up to 15. Even if a foreigner holds, it can hold only maximum up to 15%. Only under special approval, foreign or local party can hold more than that. So the banking system is very vibrant, very successful, quite efficiently run. So similarly, and then you have a lot of such banks, DFCC, NDB, to name a few, that is very successfully running with the broad participation of broader shareholder base. So it's not only selling off, there are so many other options available as well to make curtail losses and convert the state-owned enterprises into profit-making or more efficient organizations. Having said that, there are certain organizations that are there to render a service. So profit-making should not essentially be the only motive. So for as long as it's not loss-making, but it renders a service, then it's as good as making a good profit. So there are so many aspects to selling national assets, so to say, or privatization. It is also important to bring in new capital, fresh capital, foreign exchange capital into the country through different models of engagement with state-owned enterprises and integrate it to the global economy. And we have very nice some success stories, like for example Sri Lanka Telecom. It's a listed entity. Once it was privatized, it's running really beautifully. We have some more examples like WaterSedge. Mr. Tiarachi knows WaterSedge is as good as another 5-star hotel, and they render a very good service. And you go to WaterSedge, you don't feel that
very controversial example, I would rather say, because the private sector, I think Access, they started this company or the business, but the government, I think, I don't know, I can't criticize judiciary, but this was a decision of the Supreme Court to take it back, and that discouraged the whole private sector participation in some of the projects like that. So I think WaterSedge is not a good example, it's a very bad example to discourage the investors, I would rather say.
Yes, yes. What I'm saying is, although it's state-owned and state-run, it is being run as a, and then for example, you can look at Litro, you can look at Lanka Hospital. Lanka Hospital is, I am also involved in the healthcare business, so I know Lanka Hospital is the best private general hospital in Sri Lanka. So despite the fact that it's state, it's run really well, efficiently, and competing with the rest of the private hospitals in Sri Lanka, and they are the number one. So why can't we adopt that model? And like Mr. Kulasinghe also said, so you widespread the ownership and then bring in professional management, and then you can, the only way out is not selling off national assets. There could be instances where that is the only option, but there are many instances where you can still make it more efficient by changing only the management approach, appointing right managers. Now you take, for example, Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, CEB, multi-billion-dollar turnovers, and those companies should be run by professional CEOs who are paid as per international salary scales. But here what we have, we have been appointing people, yes, even incompetent people who are favorites of the politicians or the appointing authority, and they have not had the exposure of running multi-billion-dollar organizations in the past. So as Mr. Kulasinghe also said, we can bring in, and we can very well afford to match the international salary scales looking at the turnover of those companies, and then give them the task, okay, so these companies are run inefficiently, so please restructure them, re-engineer them, and convert them into profit-making organizations. So there are many ways to approach the same problem and find different solutions. So it's what is lacking here is the commitment from the political hierarchy, and one of the biggest problems I always say is the policy inconsistency in the country is the biggest problem and biggest barrier to development, as well as making SOEs more efficient and profitable.
Talked about the commitment of the political parties to make these changes. You might think that one of the reasons for this is like a key issue with SOEs is that they are overemployed. There's so many employees, more than they need. So this could be because of political promises they make. A politician could say, if I become elected, I will give you 1,000 jobs to this city, 100 jobs to this district. So this means that they try to somehow give jobs to the people. But if this system were to change, these people would have to be made redundant, these people would lose their jobs. And this could create a lot of unrest in the country, because so many people would be going without jobs, no earnings, incomes, and they would all go onto the streets. So again, this brings us back to the question of what is development. Is development trying to somehow make a profit from these companies, or which could lead to mass unemployment, or ensuring that the workers have better working conditions, they have jobs, they have good welfare? What do you think?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I believe that the profit motive should not be the single most important motive. Of course it is important, because in a commercial organization to survive you've got to make profits. But I believe that the social motives, particularly of the state-owned enterprises, since that's what this discussion is focusing on, we should say, it's not all about profit. It's about people need to be happy, like Bhutan. I think that is a very, very powerful message there. You don't need fancy cars, you don't need high salaries. If you're happy in yourself, you're 3/4 of the way to being very successful. How, again, I come back to this question. I've got a very simple black and white, a binary approach. I'm an engineer. Either something works or it doesn't. That solution is not applicable, I don't think, to state-owned enterprises. However, as long as the organization is making profits, we don't need huge profits. But what is said about politicians making promises and then struggling to keep them, I think is the biggest impediment to progress this country has had. I look at a number of state-owned enterprises and I think, what the heck are all these people doing? Now, I remember in the days when I dealt with corporations in this country, there were 3 peons seated in front of the chairman's office. So I wanted a cup of tea. So I asked one of the peons, can you please get me a cup of tea? He says, that's not my job, it's his job. Right? Don't worry about it, I'll go down to the canteen and get it myself. But once you have this attitude of, it's not my problem, and that happens through, a lot happens through overemployment. We just suffer. And we are suffering. And one of the reasons I speak with a number of my associates who I would like to attract to Sri Lanka to do oil and gas developments, and they tell me, we come there, and where one person can do the job, there are 10 people trying to do it. That makes it inefficient. We need to solve that problem. I think, gentlemen, you have had more experience of it than I have.
Yeah, let me add a point here, Mr. Tiaraji, that the overemployment in state-owned enterprises or government organizations has been a problem and a burden to the economy right throughout. That we always blame politicians, okay, you have to fulfill your election promises, and then you keep absorbing more and more people into the public sector. It is not only the politicians that should be blamed, it is the public that should take part of the responsibility, because they want to go to government jobs simply to get the pension, not to work, but to simply sit and heat the chairs and get the job security. And then you won't lose jobs, and you get, at the end of the day, you get the pension as well. This mentality has come from the education system, because we have not created enterprising enough people through our curriculum, and created enterprising people like this, like you. Now it's a good initiative Right Media has taken. I think you are still a student going to in the advanced level stage, and then this is the kind of grooming that the country should do. So I am thankful to Right Media for selecting a quite a young moderator to carry out this interview. But this kind of personality development should happen in the country. So people will not want to simply look at the pension benefits, because they are so scared about their future. At the age of 20s, they want to look at the pension and join the government sector. That is the approach, the psychology, the mentality we should change. From the school educational system, we should develop children who would dare to take risks, go abroad, and we have our education and the curriculum, the stream should be designed in such a way to give education to people that suits the global demand, local demand, and then the private sector offers better salaries. Why are you so worried about the pension? You go for a higher salary and then you perform more, you have the opportunity to go up in the ladder, you can earn more, save more. You have anyway the social security schemes like EPF, then you will have sufficient savings that you can face your retirement without fear. So it's not only the politicians, it's also the public that should be blamed in expecting government jobs and giving government jobs. We must change this mentality, but right now I think we are on the right path. Government is discouraging fresh recruitments. Government is encouraging public sector employees to go abroad for 5 years, work and come back. So we can make use of this platform as a stepping stone, and then offer the workforce that is in the public sector to the private sector here or globally. Some of the friendly nations may extend their support to take recruit some of the people, excess staff in the public sector to some of the jobs in those countries. So we can come out of the problem that way as well, so that they won't lose their job. When they return, they have the pension as well. But they go abroad, sometimes they may settle down there, or they may quit the government service and continue to work in the private sector. These kind of new initiatives should happen in a country. So it's overstaffing is a national problem. Everybody should contribute to solving that, and not for us to keep going on with this problem. And then through policy decisions, through constitution, you can come up with ceilings to the recruitment into the public sector, and then you can maybe do away completely with the pension scheme and introduce a EPF scheme. There are certain government institutes, I am sure Mr. Itiarachi will agree with me, that doesn't have pension schemes but have only EPF. So then people will not simply want to join the public sector for the social security purpose like the pension.
I think the problem I always settle with is why government is doing business. We have a category called state SOEs, state-owned enterprise. Why state-owned enterprises? What for? You take any developed country, you know, there all the services are being managed by private companies. Water, electricity, sewerage, roads, road taxing and investment in roads, how they do the investment in roads, state doesn't get involved because they collect the revenue. That's the most important thing. I was in Germany. The revenue collection is very efficient because they have a surplus always, and also they invest in new infrastructure. And Mr. Kulasingam was talking about something which I disagree to some extent, not fully, but thing is we should not get scared of these foreign companies coming and doing business. I am open because we would like to go there and learn something, right? and let them come and work with us. So, we have to structure the projects and the investment so that we reserve our rights of the business. We should not get scared. Now, for instance, a very bad example was the Sri Lankan airline. Emirates were running and we were making a lot of profit and we got a revenue. Now, instead of that, government took over and now it's a loss making institution, because they doesn't come here to do nothing. They want to make money. We also want to make money. So, we must have a system or a structure so that both parties' rights are being secured. That is the way that we have to structure this organization. And one thing, even I agree with Mr. Kulasinghe about the happiness. Now, if you take health and water, we don't put things together. We only see the water board balance sheet. We must see the health balance sheet. If you give good water, people are healthy, right? They don't have diseases. So, our health bill will come down. So, you must take the, even if as a country, we should take the country's balance sheet, not individual institutions' balance sheet. Education. Can you make education profitable? No. We invest in education and we try to get manpower, skilled people to serve the country, for the development of the country. So, therefore, certain areas we may not be able to in state enterprises the profits. So, one thing that if we can do it initially is this depoliticization of government state enterprises. That is, that we could do through legislation and the provided acts of parliaments. If you can protect that way, we can depoliticize this organization so that professional people manage this organization, right? This is the problem we have. Otherwise, we could run, I think I will give you one example. When I went to Water Board as chairman, right, that was in 2010, Water Board was making a loss of about over 300 million rupees. Following year, we made it to zero loss. And when I left, I don't know whether I resigned Water Board, I had some problem with the very top person in the finance ministry. So, at that time when I was leaving, it was making over 1 billion profit. It depends how you lead your team, how you come out with new methodologies, procedures to reduce wastage, right? Sometimes very simple things we do. With the simple things you can make a lot, right? So, therefore, these enterprises, if you have right people at the right place, we could change these organizations, right? So, that's all. I mean, we have to think like that to progress.
So you talked about the university education. You asked, can we make education profitable? And as Mr. said before, education is a key thing that influences the way that people think, that shapes the future minds of the future generation. So if we look at Sri Lankan universities today, do we see the government really getting the return on their investment? Because if we look at public universities, almost every day there are strikes, there are protests, people on the streets, there's ragging. So do these students actually make the most out of the opportunity they are given? Do you think we should create a program where we can at least, where maybe after a certain point, after the graduates are earning a high salary, do you think we should implement a program where we can get back something?
Can I say something about this? Because education and health, I was promoting this idea with quite a number of ministers, the politicians. It should be, they should go on the base of the cost centers, right? university should be any education institution should be a cost center. So there is a responsibility of the university management to see that whatever the monies that they spend, they earn that money. I don't agree with this free education. Maybe some people may disagree with me, but what I am saying is, those who can pay. My two children studied in Sri Lanka. They were graduated in engineering and also the accountancy, and I didn't spend a single cent. I could have paid. Depending on the income of the person, they should pay their children's education, whichever the level education that you are talking about. Now, if you take a hospital, free medicine for all, good for maintaining good health indicators, but at what cost? But if a very rich man, right, go to the hospital, he doesn't pay a red cent. Poor man, he doesn't pay anything. So those who can pay, let them pay. We must have an insurance system, education system, so that those who can afford to pay, let them pay. Others, so that the university or the education institution, the hospital, they become cost centers. They have to earn money. They have to use that money efficiently, right? So these are the things that structural changes, policy changes that government should take. They are scared of this. That is why they are not doing it. The politicians are scared of changing free education or free health service and charging. You know, sometime back, they started costing, at least costing, and show the patient that we spent so much for you, right? Now, you go to any developed country, nothing free. Even India, education you got to pay after grade primary level.
For that matter, China as well.
Yeah. I think if you don't do those kinds of changes, the quality of education will also go down. You were talking about strikes. If a student is paying and studying, he want to pay less number of years and come out of the university and earn that money after when he is employed, right? So everybody think about the efficiency, right? So these things should be inculcated in the people's mind, and they should work towards that. As he very correctly said, we must blame the public on certain matters, because we don't take responsibility. We say that's not my problem. I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm good. No problem for me. But 101 people in the street, they are suffering these days. You go to villages and see whether the people are having anything to eat even, right? So this is, I think, we need to rethink about the matter, and the politicians should have the courage to take decisions and make changes. Now what they say is, these days, I'm not talking about politics, right? These days they say only for essential operations they have medicine. Yes. The other operations they just postpone it. Yeah. Other treatments they postpone it.
So, yeah, as he correctly said, I also agree with that. For typical example is the medical education in Sri Lanka. So you have a cut-off mark, and only a certain amount of children are allowed to go to the government medical colleges. Rest of the people, when they can afford, they somehow find money, they go abroad. And look at the loss of foreign exchange that it is causing. So if you allow the people, like there was Colombo North Private Hospital once called the Ragama Medical Faculty, that was during Jaya Jayawardena government. They initiated that, and then a lot of people went to that university, and a lot of high quality doctors that university was able to produce. But due to social pressure, it was also brought into the mainstream government medical colleges network. So as a starting point, if the government allows, okay, those who cannot afford can come to the medical college for education. but those who can afford and those who don't reach the necessary cut-off mark, they can study here, still medicine. Why should they go abroad, spend money, come back, do X16 and other exams and learn something totally in a different environment and come and try to practice medicine here. So it is not only limited to medical education, for engineering education, and so many like the okay, if you pass A levels and if you can afford, in the international university you can pay and go, and if you are not intelligent enough, if you are not committed enough, if you are not dedicated for your studies, you can't move forward. So then you should not discourage people from coming into education just because of the cut-off mark. So you should allow. So these are the people that are so if they can't afford, we deprive them of becoming an engineer or a doctor, so and they end up in doing a clerical job or doing something else, whether so we kill their aspirations. So the system should change in that direction, where the public should be educated. The people should not do cheap politics. Starting with medical education, you give medical education on paid basis to every student who aspires to go to a medical college, and then that will be a very much of a income earning faculty. Every university can have, as Mr. Hettiarachchi said, all the universities will be self-dependent, self-finance if their medical faculties are allowing students to come and do medicine in those universities as well.
So we talked about social pressure. When CITEM was created in Sri Lanka, there was a lot of social pressure. There were so many protests. Like, it came to a position where the government was forced to stop that. So how do you think it can practically be applied in Sri Lanka? There's always going to be opposition, always going to be social pressure.
So this opposition is coming only from a particular group of people and one.
If you are going to give in, you take. We are only talking about Sri Lanka. Take any other country. See Bangladesh. How many private universities? How many people they absorb from Sri Lanka? Yeah. Even Nepal. You take it Nepal. I was constructing some Buddhist monastery in Lumbini. I was with a politician, I don't want to mention his name. He's from a very respectable political family. And we were there, and on one of our opening ceremonies, there were 3 Sri Lankan girls who came to that ceremony. And while we were having tea, we asked them, "What are you doing here?" This girl said, "We are doing medicine in Bhairava University." Have you ever heard a university by that name, Bhairava? Then I told the politician, when we are going back to the airport, we'll go and see the Bhairava International Airport also close by. So we went and saw that university. It's just like not even a Mahavidyalaya in a rural area. So these girls paying a lot of money, and they go and do substandard education, substandard quality, right, kind of education. They get a medical MBBS degree from that university, right. So we can have thousands of such universities in Sri Lanka with the available buildings. Yes. So I think we have to start this dialogue, and this is a good forum to discuss this kind of thing. What I am trying to say is, we must not go because of the social pressure and the political pressure that we have. We must break this and try to tell the people, this is what we can do. We can address the parents, tell them, maybe it looks like a political campaign. We are not doing politics, but this is the truth.
Yes.
Right? We must tell this to the public. This should be open to public. Let them listen to these things. Think about their children's future. And these university undergrads also should understand this, right? Because during this period, I have seen the relationship between the lecturers of the university and the students, particularly in the Faculty of Arts, is, they don't respect anybody. But if you go to the medical faculty or the engineering faculty, the relationship is different. So we work with them. It is not only to just give the lecture and go. We have to work with those professors or lecturers to do our assignments and things like that. So we had a good relations. Now these are some of the important bits, because some people say that's not our thing. Ragging is not our business, right? We are there only to lecture. No, they are not there to lecture. They are there to educate our future generation, bring them as professional to the society, useful people to the society. So university lecturers, professors also, they should take their responsibility. The wardens of the university hostels also should take the responsibility. No one is taking responsibility. Let the students do whatever they want, because they are adults. There is discipline in any place, whether it is university or school or a workplace. We have to maintain this discipline. So these things should bring in, as he is very correctly said, from the school culture. We have to generate a good workforce, useful workforce. Workforce not only to the laborers and carpenters, workforce I mean, even the engineers are in the workforce, right?
Yes.
Doctors are also a part of workforce to treat people. So if you bring in this kind of a dialogue, and I think we should not only think about this one, we must focus our discussions in this particular right group to various subject areas, particularly focusing on that.
Yeah.
So that will be a very good platform for people to come to know what we should do. Even the politicians should listen to this.
Thank you. Yes. So you talked about courage. Politicians might not have the courage to do things. It can take time for, when implementing long-term policies, it can take a lot of time for these policies to come into effect. But then elections come every 5 years. So at the end of that 5 years, maybe those they haven't borne any fruit. So the public wouldn't be able to see why the policies have been implemented. They wouldn't be able to see the benefits. So maybe that's why politicians are afraid to implement these long-term solutions.
No, if they do this kind of long-term solution, they have a long-term survival. Because they are for the short-term survival, they do these kind of short-term things. Now, for instance, we wanted to increase the water tariff. We wanted to increase the electricity tariff. It should be done on a formula year by year. Because of the election, they postponed it. Right? Now it came to a point we have to increase by 300%. Now it's a huge shock to the people. But if you gradually doing it like any other thing, so market forces will work, right?
When you think we are subsidizing too many things in our economy, like if you look at gas, so many things have been subsidized, so the people have gotten used to luxuries, maybe they can't afford to use.
Yeah, subsidizing whom? Subsidizing everybody. That is wrong. What I am saying is, we should subsidize in electricity and water, they have the slabs. Less than 15 units or 30 units, your tariff is low. You must come out with that. Even for gas subsidy, rich people should pay the right price. Right?
Tariff and price should be cost reflective.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are incurring a loss, and who's bearing the loss? End of the day, the public has to bear the loss.
So, Mr. Kulasinghe, what do you think we should do in the future to address these issues we have?
It's basically asking for a person. However, I'll tell you my take on this. We sit on enough gas to generate 500 megawatts of electricity for 20 years. That's with the two fields we've already discovered. I'm only talking about that. Okay? Now, generally what happens? We invite a contractor to come along do the job and go away. The proposal was costed at $863 million for 8 years of gas production. The comparable proposal I had is $400 million that includes the power station to generate the electricity. But what do I get told? Apita salli. We have come to the stage in this one where local banks are prepared to fund the project. Now, somebody has to take risks. And to me, in 3 years, 4 years maximum, we will be generating electricity. As long as politicians don't get involved and say, "Areyata rasawak dennako." Mayor, that shouldn't happen. The professionals like Mr. Etiarachi and Mr. Abhasinghe very rightly say should be allowed to get on with the job. We do that, and this country in 10 years will be transformed. If we don't do it, we'll remain a basket case country until the cows come home. The choice is entirely ours. All it needs is a certain amount of backbone to say, "No, we'll do it this way." My proposal involves, apart from an advisory panel of very, very senior oil and gas professionals, who, by the way, are prepared. They were so excited by what I was trying to do that they said, "We don't want anything. Just give us the ticket to come. We will stay here and mentor your guys." Now, our engineers are good enough. They don't have the oil and gas knowledge. But in terms of ability, I have dealt with engineers from various countries. I would class our people in the top 10%. Well, they don't have the knowledge, but they certainly have the ability. Now we should exploit it. And we will do it by using nationally attractive projects as the vehicles, right? And there's plenty of examples where we could have done things cheaper, better, and more educational. So, even at this late stage, let's get after it.
So we had a very interesting discussion today. We talked about a wide range of topics, about what is development and how we can further develop our country. We talked about the fundamental issues that we have faced as a nation and how we should move forward in the future. So I would like to thank all three of our very distinguished guests for taking time out of their busy schedules and being with us.